So do we have, here we have Zuena. Najib, is that you, Najib? Najib, okay, we got Najib, and we're waiting for Mike Serame from Vodacom. Mike, are you here? Yeah, fantastic, good. And we're waiting for Onica. Makwakwa? Oh, sure, fantastic, yes. Zuena, we're waiting for Zuena from Smile. Otherwise, please come up on stage. Okay, gentlemen, ladies, we are going to get started with our first panel. I'm going to invite Onica to take over the stage. Onica, we're waiting for Zuena, but since Najib and Mike are already here and we have a tight schedule, we need to get started with the agenda. So I think Najib is getting a rundown on the questions. You also have some time at the end for Q&A, so please do keep your questions going. Okay, Onica, you have two speakers with you now. Unfortunately, Zuena is not able to make it. She had some health issue, so we're going to have you, Najib, and Mike manage this panel. Yeah.
Good morning. Still morning, right? Yep. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and welcome back. Sorry to disrupt your networking morning, but this session is the Voice of the Operators panel. And we will be discussing policy and regulation for accelerating growth. The COVID-19 pandemic has fast-tracked the digitalization of African economies. According to GSMA data, mobile internet adoption continued to increase in 2020 despite the economic recession experienced in the region. By the end of 2020, 28% of sub-Saharan African population was connected to the internet. Mobile broadband coverage was also increased substantially in sub-Saharan Africa. However, 1 in 5 people still live in an area with no mobile broadband coverage. An estimated 210 million people who are still without coverage. More concerning, though, is the widening usage gap of 53%, which threatens the growth of these digital economies. What this means is that in addition to those not covered by a nearby connection, more than half of the population in the region is still not using mobile internet despite living in an area with mobile broadband coverage. To explore the policy and regulatory frameworks needed to enable and support growth in the sector, I'm joined by an esteemed panel of experts from the private sector. I am going to ask Mike, who's sitting closest to me, to please introduce himself.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam MC. My name is Mike Serame. I'm an executive head of external affairs in Vodacom Group, based in Midrand. But obviously, we are doing work around the footprint in the continent. We are in 8 markets, including Tanzania. The latest new additions in the last quarter of last year was Egypt and Ethiopia. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here and to be part of your panel, and I'm looking forward to a good engagement with your audience. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Najib.
Thank you, Madam MC. My name is Najib Ferej. I am the Deputy CFO from Halotel. I appreciate being here, and I'm looking forward to a fruitful engagement. Thank you.
Awesome. My name is Onica Makwakwa. I am the head of Africa at the Alliance for Affordable Internet, where we work to advance policies and regulatory frameworks on affordable and meaningful connectivity. At this point, I would like to give each of our panelists an opportunity of about 2 minutes to speak to today's topic on the kind of policy and regulatory frameworks that we need in order to accelerate growth in the continent. Anyone can start.
Talk about hitting the ground running. It's exactly what I have to do today. Madam MC, I wish I would have started with observing some protocols, especially to public policy owners and the minister responsible for portfolio of communication and digital communication, the regulator, if they are present, and colleagues from the sector and the industry. Madam, let me just quickly say that I am not going to be to lecture this esteemed audience on the importance of the intersection between public policy, regulation, and growth, because that, I think, has been clearly underscored by what you have been able to achieve as a country in terms of National Information and Communication Technology Policy 2016. I think that has been, but I think we can probably quickly move towards the ideal policy asks and opportunities that we can be able to utilize. Look, I think COVID-19, as you correctly said, did lay bare our socioeconomic challenges and the challenges in terms of...
We understand the pain points and we understand what the consumers are complaining about because they tell us directly. So we can then tell the government where exactly we need to change. So the key thing is taxes mainly. So in terms of policy, we need to reduce the amount of taxes in the country. Thank you.
I was hoping we could get through the first 15 minutes of this conversation without diving directly into the taxation issue, but I'm glad that both of you have raised this because this is a growing concern, not just in this country perhaps, but throughout the continent. As governments are balancing the need for revenue against declining revenue in their traditional sources of income, this sector tends to be perceived as the sector where growth is happening, a sector where there's money, people are buying new phones, there's new consumers coming into the sector. How would you recommend balancing this demand? Because there's a chance that if we continue to tax the sector at this rate, we could actually forestall its growth. So what recommendations would you make to a government that's facing these challenges around the kind of smart taxation approach that is needed to still ensure that we can still invest in the sector and grow the sector as well? Because they need the money. There's no money coming from, the traditional sources anymore. But we agree. We've done infographics, for example, for Nigeria, that shows over 25 unique taxes in the sector, from import duty to SIM card registration tax to VAT. And I'm sure you are more knowledgeable about all the different areas where the sector is taxed. But, what gives? How do we make the case for smarter approach to taxation in a way that does not hamstring the sector?
Thank you. So when we look at increases in taxation, at the end of the day, we are reducing the volumes that are being consumed. So we need to consider that if we reduce the taxes, then more volumes will be consumed. And in telco, the volumes are really the key drivers. You see, we sell a scratch card, for example. You don't expect to charge a high price on the scratch card and get more profit. You expect to sell more scratch cards and make sure more consumers buy these scratch cards for you to get a profit. So we should focus on the volumes. And if we reduce the prices, then ultimately the consumption increases and there is more revenue for the government with the same existing taxes instead of introducing new ones. So ultimately we need to take this into consideration. instead of introducing new taxes, we should just consider how to promote the consumption of the existing ones. So in order to do this, we can target certain areas, for example, in rural areas. As Halotel, we have been able to reach around 15,600 villages in Tanzania. Previously, 1,500 of those villages were not connected, and so we drove inclusion and in terms of communication, together with financial inclusion as well, where our agents were able to provide their services in those areas. So we have been able to increase the number of people who are consuming telecommunication service. By doing this, we are able to now add more revenue to the government in terms of taxes for the services that are being consumed in those areas. We were able to do this through the government cooperation as well, and this is the UCSAF, which we partner with in many projects as well. So these are the good policies, the good projects that are in place, and we should try to focus on such things where we can work together to increase more consumption instead of increasing more taxes. Taxes reduce consumption. So let us try to focus on increasing consumption, and that way we will be able to contribute more to the government as well.
Great. Would you like to add to that as well?
Let me try to also throw in my 2 cents. I think I fully agree with my colleague. But I think there should be underlying principles that guide our approach to taxation. One, I think in a lot of instances you see that there is a beginning of fiscal year, and there are targets, and then you start looking at where do you get the money. So I think we need to move away from short-termism as a principle, and to do deep dive analysis of the impact of taxation. Because yes, you can increase the collection and reach your target, but at what expense? If that is killing digitalization or digital connectivity and financial inclusion, is it worth it? What kind of impact? Can you quantify that impact in money terms and then be able to say, this that you're going to make, the couple of billions that you'll make out of taxation, that do they justify? Or is the cost way too big, especially if you are going to be making the economy to be more moribund? That's one, short-termism. And I think extractionist approach to taxation, because look, there are certain sectors, let's say the MFS or the mobile financial services. Yes, in relative terms, you see a lot of money moving between person to person or person to business through those capabilities. But the reality of the matter is the MNOs are making a fraction of what is being transacted. But at face value, you can say, wow, these guys are actually doing very well, and we need a slice of the cake. But encroaching in that way makes this business not to be profitable. And eventually MNOs would be pushed to a point where they would say, look, it is not worth our while, you know what I mean? And the cost, as I alluded, because we have been able to bring dignity in terms of the ability to transact and the ability to play in the economy through the MFS. Lastly, Program Director, I think the issue of we need to be preoccupied by investment-oriented approach to taxation. Is this approach helping to grow and develop investment? And so I actually think that in a lot of cases, most of the fiscal pressures, if the MNOs were to be engaged, I think collectively with the government and the regulators, we could probably find avenues that work better, that don't harm the industry, that don't harm digital inclusion, and so on. So I think I want to lay those principles as principles that should inform our approach to taxation, to levies, and all that.
Great. And indeed, it is a perception, right, that there's growth and therefore we should take more. But I'm really pleased to hear both of you speak to this issue of giving room for the sector to grow. And one of those ways is, focusing on increasing usage by growing consumers. In this region in particular, we have a worrying and growing usage gap. And this is the gap in terms of people who live within connectivity but are not actually using the internet. What, if any, is the role of mobile operators in collaboration with government and civil society, I'm sure, to really begin to help us close this gap of connectivity? Because I believe that if we take a whole society approach towards it, it actually benefits both the public sector, the private sector, as well as civil society. We saw quite a bit of this during COVID, where mobile operators really stepped up and stepped in to enable what we would think of as meaningful connectivity. What other opportunities do you think exist for continuing? This is not the core of your business per se, but you've definitely, as mobile operators, stepped into whether it's supporting digital skills programs or zero rating specific, educational aspects of being able to access the internet. How do we capitalize and build on this beyond the crisis period? Would you like to start, Mike?
Oh yes, I think our own view as a company, as a corporate, is that part of the biggest challenge, even where the infrastructure exists, is a lack of access to instruments, devices, and within Vodacom family, both the Vodacom group, which is the African footprint, and Vodafone group in Europe, I think there is a project called Africa.Connect, where there is an approach to try to get second-hand devices that are refurbished, that can be sold in the continent at affordable prices. Because look, we are also mindful of the fact that there are a number of innovations, whether it's IoT and all that, whether it's investment in agriculture, to beef up the issue of food security within the continent, smart farming and all that. All those needs would need proper devices, whether it's e-learning, it's e-health, and all those things. So the issue of the cost of devices, besides the infrastructure that obviously the government and regulators in terms of spectrum and so on are dealing with. That is the area that I think we hope to work with governments and regulators to find a way around, so that people are empowered with requisite devices. They can be able to take advantage of the new generation networks, new technologies, and everything. Thank you.
Thanks. Would you like to also give us a response to that?
Yes, please. Regarding the usage gap, the first thing is the devices. And previously, we appreciate the government removed the VAT on devices so that we could sell them at a cheaper price. Unfortunately, COVID disrupted this, and the prices for the devices went up. So we were still not able to improve the usage in the areas where the usage was lower. So we hope the government will provide us with more support in this area, because we still believe we need to get these devices to these areas. So as it stands, most of the people use the basic phones, no access to the internet. So if we were able to get these devices to these areas, then internet usage will go up. Other than the devices, the next thing is the pricing. So if we're able to reduce the prices for data, then usage will go up as well. And mostly this is coming again in the taxes, which we already discussed. Another thing is, as operators, we know that people go to the internet for different purposes. So we create more content so that to cater to all the market niches, all the market segments. We provide, for example, the partnership we have with the College of Information and Communication Technology in UDISM. We provide e-learning to students, and this is one area where we believe we are pushing to make sure that more students use the internet, access the internet, and develop the education in Tanzania. And other areas we are working on, you will see soon, I believe, but this is the third key thing, is to create content that caters to the different market segments.
Great. So before we pivot to the audience here, I just want to ask you one last question, or rather give you an opportunity to tell us about any private-public partnerships that are successful that you may be involved in, because World Bank is estimating that this region needs $109 billion in infrastructure investment in order to connect everyone in the continent. Even if private sector contributed 50% of that, we would still need government to invest in this infrastructure, as well as perhaps development partners. But a great opportunity for public-private partnerships to ensure that we are advancing in our digital development within the continent. Please feel free to share any examples of successful PPPs that you may be involved with in your organization, or that you are aware of in any way. Any public-private partnerships that your organization may be involved with that you'd like to highlight at this moment?
Sorry, so you mean any partnerships we have directly with the government, or?
On connectivity, or with villages. I think you mentioned that you're involved in connecting villages, and this could also be your USF type project as well.
Okay. So in terms of the rural villages, UCSAF, the Universal Service Communication Access Fund, is open to all operators. And we as Halotel participate in the auctions that are done, and one of the things we are proud of is to make sure we get connectivity all over Tanzania. So our main slogan for the company is Together for the Better. So we want to make sure we are together with Tanzanians in bettering everything in terms of services. So we are happy to partner with the government in this area to make sure that we connect all the villages, all areas that were not connected before. And this is a very good partnership, and we believe it has worked out very well. As previously mentioned, we have already connected 15,600 villages, and some of these were not connected before. So it has worked out tremendously, and we believe it will continue very, very well into the future, and it will contribute significantly to the GDP in Tanzania as well, because now we have added more people onto the bracket of taxation. These people will contribute to the economy. The people in these areas before, let's say, for specifically in the mobile financial sector, they were not able to transact, or maybe they had to move too far away to withdraw money. Maybe someone here in Dar es Salaam would send money to their parents in the villages. They would have to go to another village just to withdraw this money. So with the accessibility to the networks, they are now able to withdraw money from their own village and use that time to do more productive things. And this also encourages the economic development in these villages as well, in these areas. So the people they see the financial services being provided in their areas, and they can engage in more economic activity, and they can develop their places more. So it contributes overall to the economic development, to the social development, and to the GDP of the country as well. So we believe this is a very good collaboration that we have, and we are happy to continue doing it.
Great. Mike, any PPPs you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, look, let me just lay the principle, and I'm going to ask my colleague Rosaline and the head of corporate affairs locally to be more tangible in terms of the examples of PPPs we are engaged in. Look, as the corporate, we are very serious about our social compact. And we are very serious in terms of working with governments in markets where we operate as a principle. And we are very serious in our role as a responsible corporate citizen. And some of the projects that I think got a lot of publicity would be the vaccination. You would remember how big we went, how many doses we contributed, what was the value in money terms, you know. But there are a couple of other projects in rural communities that deals with women in agriculture and so on. But ask a colleague to also come in with examples of more tangible projects. Thank you.
Who would your colleague be? I can.
Thank you very much, Mike and Onica. I think I would just I would like to add very lightly on the point that is being raised in terms of partnerships. I do agree 100% with Najib on the part of partnerships with UCSAF, the Universal Communications Access Fund. We also do take a very active part in ensuring that we leverage the subsidy that the government extends to operators like ourselves to make sure that we get the coverage to those underserved communities. And on the back of that, you find the socioeconomic benefits being able to get rolled out to those segments of our society as well. But most specifically, I'd like to highlight a very good example that we recently brought to market in partnership, since we're talking about partnerships in this context, in partnership with the government through both its Ministry of ICT as the anchor ministry, but also the Ministry for Health, as well as the local government ministry, where when you shed a light on maternal health, it's a very potent subject. And using technology, we're able to make sure that no woman suffers death just because they couldn't get to a hospital on time, for example, in this case. We did roll out a pilot in Serame, Mwanza area in Shinyanga, and there we saw the maternal deaths be reduced to up to 30%. And on the back of that success, just recently in the month of April this year, we took that partnership nationally. Technology comes in the use of referral systems. But the technical support really is where you see this PPP come to light, where the government plays a big part in ensuring that the program does roll out systematically. At the moment, we've gone beyond Mwanza, Shinyanga. We have hit the region of Morogoro, Lindi, and I believe we're in Dodoma. We're now in discussions with the implementing partners in Zanzibar, and the target there is by 2024 to make sure that we cover the entire Tanzania in all its regions in rolling out this unique PPP program. Thank you.
Great. That was really a great note for us to make that connection of the value of this connectivity and the value of all of us involved in closing the digital divides that exist and helping grow our digital development. It's going to take more than just private sector alone. I think these examples we just closed with show that it also requires government, it requires civil society, it requires all of us to be invested in Africa's digital growth and development. So if there are any questions from the audience, please assist me with that.
Yeah, we can take one or two quick questions. If anyone has a question or a comment or a suggestion, yes, just identify yourself as well.
Thank you. My name is Henry Mwenuka, a lawyer from Avis Legal and ventured in ICT law. Well, I have keen interest on the subject of taxes that the panel there has tried to shed light on. Now, the question here is, what's the country, let's say in Africa, with the best tax model in terms of the telecommunication industry that perhaps we as Tanzania can learn from? And how do they do? How have they put the infrastructure, the tax infrastructure, in a way that it doesn't frustrate the industry, rather facilitate it to grow in a sustainable manner? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Naza Kirama, and currently the president of Internet Society Tanzania. And my question goes to Halotel. In terms of internet access in the villages that you have rolled out your infrastructure, could you point out as to whether we have reached to a point where the internet services that you provide are first affordable, and second, if the internet is provide meaningful access, and as to whether, number three, reliability in terms of quality of access. Are we there yet in terms of, I'm talking about the villages, not in Dar es Salaam. I think Dar es Salaam or other cities or towns that have 4G, they read from a different script. So my question is, could you speak about those three items qualitatively? Is your internet access in the rural area a reality? And whether it is meaningful, and the affordability. Forget about the data, because sometimes if you rely on data, you might also lose some of the people that we are saying we have to go with everybody.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions.
Yes.
I think let's get to those questions. Yeah. Who of you would like to respond to those questions? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So to the gentleman from Avis, I would like to just point out that when looking at taxation, we shouldn't copy exactly what is being done from another country, but we should learn from different countries and see what best applies to us. You see, the way the telco sector is right now, we can't tax it the same way as we were taxing analog businesses, for example. This is a digital area, so there is more things to consider. And the way the governments are taxing this sector is different in most of the countries. So you can see that we did copy previously some taxes in other countries, and it did not work for us. Because you can see airtime levy in another country, but no VAT there. But in our country, we have VAT. We shouldn't just copy what they have, because if we're copying one thing, that means we should remove the other thing. So this will not work. We need to look at all of the taxes that they have and compare them to the taxes that we have and see what would work best. And it is always better to consider different countries and not just one particular country, because some taxes work best in specific environments. So we need to consider that. Thank you.
I think it is tired. Thank you very much. Look, I think there is a lot of variables that will have to be taken into consideration when we talk taxation. Look, I think the level of industrialization of the country, the size of the tax base would come into effect. So you would find where there are minimal sources of revenue collection, then taxation would be the only or one of the few avenues a government would depend on. So I think there is a lot involved in that regard, but I can say that SA may be leading in this regard, and it is leading because of those factors that I mentioned, and yes, I agree that at a time when I think that debate is a bit old, at a time when the new levies were supposed to be instituted in Tanzania, we reached out to GSMA, which is an industry body, which was able to give us a very thorough comparative analysis of a level of taxation in various markets. And had that levy gone through, it was going to put Tanzania at the top in terms of the level of taxation, and it was very clear that that levy would have impacted negatively digital inclusion and financial inclusion. So I think there is a lot involved, but the fact of the matter, or what we are putting across, is that as the industry would wish to be consulted, would wish to participate in some consensus building process, mindful of the pressures that the sitting government has in terms of the need for revenue, and helping to come up with ideas on how innovatively we can help government to because obviously we can't selfishly be also putting our own profitability above pressing national interest and development priorities. So I think, like the program director said, what is important is to try to maintain the necessary balance. You know, you don't harm the industry, you don't harm digital inclusion. At the same time, you are mindful of the responsibility that government has. Thank you.
Thanks. We're almost out of time, but Onica would like to wrap up with a few closing remarks.
No,
Thanks.
thank you. I just want to share a resource. CIPESA recently published a paper on digital taxation in Africa, and they went through a regional consultative process to develop this. So this is an ongoing conversation, which I think is really great that it's come up here, and the issue of consultation, again, you know, really hones down to how we started this conversation on policies and regulatory frameworks, that what's most important is to ensure that we are consulting with the key stakeholders in order to grow together. Thank you.